These are the quintessential symbol of corporate greed. During the peak of this phase in gaming, loot boxes went from nothing major to destroying what made video games fun in the first place. Most people would agree that loot boxes are bad, but I'm sure others either don't care or don't mind them being in games. Though, no matter how you feel about them, one thing is undeniable: loot boxes changed video games forever. They didn't impact how games looked. They changed how games were designed, monetized, how players engage with them, and even how governments think about digital entertainment. But how did it get this way? The roots of loot boxes go back further than most people realize. In fact, their origin isn't in console or PC gaming, it's in arcades and trading card games. Think of those harmless machines that you'd put a quarter into for a random toy or sticker, or something like Pokemon card packs, the latter being far from in the past. These things are the foundation of loot box mechanics. Fast forward to the late 2000s and early 2010s, free-to-play games were becoming massively popular, especially in Asia. Titles like MapleStory and Dungeon Fighter Online introduced randomized item systems known as gacha mechanics in Japan. These systems let players spend in-game currency, often bought with real money, to receive a random item from a virtual pool. Western studios took notice. Team Fortress 2, one of Valve's most successful multiplayer games, added loot boxes in 2010. Suddenly, you could earn crates while playing, but needed to buy a $2.50 key to open them. Inside were all sorts of different cosmetics. All were randomized. This was really the turning point. Valve showed that monetizing randomness could work in a premium game, and it could work really well. We'll come back to Valve later, though. Then came Overwatch, Blizzard's 2016 team shooter, which put loot boxes front and center. Players earned boxes by leveling up or buying them directly. Inside were character skins, voice lines, sprays, and more. The appeal was obvious: the anticipation, the shiny presentation, the legendary orange glow of a rare drop. It made people feel excited even if they just got junk. And, more importantly, it made Blizzard a whole lot of money. What made this different from DLC or microtransactions was the lack of transparency. You weren't buying a skin, you were buying a chance at one. And that chance was addictive. If you've been in the gaming world for a while, you know there isn't a loot box discussion without 2017 Star Wars Battlefront 2, which has gone down as a massive controversy and was really the end of the line for gamers. On the surface, it was everything fans wanted: the same massive battles and iconic heroes of the older games, but in amazing next-gen graphics. But underneath the hood was a loot box system that infected every single part of the game. Key characters like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader were locked behind massive credit walls, requiring 40+ hours of grinding per hero unless you shelled out money. What really crossed the line was that the loot boxes contained star cards. These cards were gameplay-enhancing perks like increased health, faster abilities, or stronger attacks, making the game essentially pay to win. The internet pretty much exploded. The game's Reddit AMA was brutal, and EA's infamous response about players feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment became the most downvoted comment in Reddit's history with over 600,000 downvotes. Especially at this point, everyone hated the game and hated EA. It became so bad that EA had to take a step back and completely overhaul the game and its mechanics to make an actually fun, rewarding system that made you want to play. And might I say, this overhaul was incredible. As I was playing this game for gameplay in this video, I was reminded of how fun the game is at its core. You can find hundreds of videos on here deep diving into the terrible mess that was the loot boxes of this game, so with that, I'll move on. Some games had loot boxes so ingrained in the game that it became sort of its own economy. Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Valve's competitive shooter, didn't just implement loot boxes, it turned them into a real-world market. In 2013, Valve introduced weapon cases and key-based loot boxes. These crates held skins, purely cosmetic but highly stylized and often extremely rare. A knife skin, for example, might have a drop rate of less than 0.5% and could be worth thousands on the Steam marketplace. Then came the third-party websites. Suddenly, skins could be gambled. Sites like CSGO Lotto, CSGO Empire, and others let users deposit skins and spin digital wheels, bet on matches, or enter jackpot-style raffles. The winnings: more skins, more value, and more dopamine to the brain. It really did get out of hand, especially when YouTubers began promoting these sites. T. Martin and Syndicate are the first ones that come to my mind personally, and they would advertise third-party websites while not disclosing that they owned them. Children began gambling. Real money and skins were no longer cosmetic, but they became a kind of currency. Valve eventually cracked down, but the system still exists in a legal gray area. Even now, Counter-Strike 2, case openings are a major draw. a whole generation of players learned the language of gambling, odds, rarity, and returns on investment all through gaming. CSGO showed that loot boxes weren't just some design tool, they were an economic system capable of creating black markets and digital addictions. The disaster with Battlefront 2 sparked actual legislative scrutiny. Loot boxes weren't just a gaming issue anymore, they were a policy issue. Belgium and the Netherlands became the first countries to take action. Their gambling commissions investigated loot boxes and concluded that randomized purchases with real money violated local gambling laws. The result being games like FIFA, Overwatch, and CSGO having to disable loot boxes in those countries or face legal consequences. Other countries, including the UK, Germany, and Australia, began their own investigations. Meanwhile, US politicians introduced bills targeting loot boxes in games marketed to children, calling them predatory and psychologically manipulative. Some of the bills didn't pass, but the message was clear. The government was paying attention. Even the ESRB, the video game industry's self-regulating body, felt the pressure. In 2018, it added a new label. In-game purchases includes random items. It wasn't much, but it acknowledged that loot boxes were something different from traditional microtransactions. Publishers responded by shifting tactics. Loot box became taboo, so the terminology changed to packs, drops, or surprise mechanics. But the randomization still existed. It was just trying to be a little more shady. While the governments worked on legal responses, the players also fought back online. The gaming community united around disliking these exploitative practices. Influencers and journalists took the lead, releasing breakdowns of odds, dissecting manipulative systems, and calling out developers. Hashtags trended, different memes about loot boxes would be made, and review bombs were pretty common on storefronts like Steam and Metacritic. People weren't just angry, they were now informed. Different YouTube videos explained how variable ratio reinforcement, a psychological trick used in casinos, was being baked into video games. This also extends out of just the people playing the games, as I'm sure there were thousands of pissed off parents who had to yell at their kids for taking their credit card to buy loot boxes for the new Call of Duty gun. This universal awareness from all parties involved forced change. Some developers removed loot boxes entirely, like in Battlefront 2, but others added clear drop rates and odds. New systems like Battle Passes became heavily prominent with games like Fortnite and snowballed with every game having one too. Even though game features were still monetized, it was more transparent and less manipulative. It was proof that community action could make a difference and that gamers, when united, could shift the industry. The most lasting impact of loot boxes isn't the controversy. It's how they rewired the design of modern games. Even as the direct use of loot boxes has declined, their philosophy has spread everywhere. Today's games are built around monetization-first thinking. Developers now prioritize long-term engagement, time gating, and monetize progression. The idea isn't to sell you a game, it's to sell you time within that game. Think of the Battle Pass, a system designed to replace loot boxes by offering tiered rewards over a season. It's more transparent, sure, but it's built to exploit FOMO. Miss a season, those skins might never return. The pressure to grind or pay to skip is real. Games now rely on daily login rewards, rotating shops, limited time events, and tiered currencies that confuse players and obscure real-world value. It is all rooted in the same loot box DNA. Keep players chasing the next unlock, spending incrementally, and staying hooked. Even single-player games are feeling the impact. Look at essentially any sports game. They are sold at full price, like other games, but also include packs to pay for that will upgrade your team. The line between player progression and financial investment is completely blurred with systems like this. And perhaps most disturbingly, young players are growing up with these mechanics as the normal. Random rewards, virtual currencies, digital scarcity, these aren't new concepts. They're expected. The next generation may not even realize that there was a time when games didn't monetize this way. So, if we take a look, did we win a fight against loot boxes? Yes and no. Us gamers successfully pushed back against the worst. Battlefront 2 proved that backlash matters. Some laws were passed, some loot boxes were removed, the conversation changed, and I guess that is something to be proud of. But the industry adapted heavily. The mechanics survived, just disguised. Games now drip feed content over months to keep you subscribed, spending, and logging in daily. In many ways, loot boxes were the trial run that taught publishers how far they could go to make more money, and how to adjust when called out. Essentially, we didn't kill loot boxes, we just taught the industry how to evolve them. Loot boxes changed more than just monetization. They changed how games were made, how players think, and how developers view their audience. They blurred the lines between fun and finance, and between game and gamble. But they also taught us something powerful. The players have a voice. That pushback works, the transparency matters, and that a more ethical future for gaming isn't just possible, it's worth fighting for. Because at the end of the day, games should inspire us, challenge us, and bring us joy, not drain our wallets with hidden odds and psychological tricks. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please show any kind of support by liking, commenting, or subscribing, all of which means so much to me and would greatly help the channel. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.